It was a crisp morning in late autumn when the Public Safety Center on the outskirts of Kansas City hummed with quiet activity. The center, situated in a part of town where the industrial sprawl met residential neighborhoods, stood as a pillar of calm in a rough corner of the city. Inside, a few officers and community workers bustled, handling mundane but important tasks, paperwork, routine checks, and the occasional visitor. The world outside seemed distant, but the peace wouldn't last long. In the parking lot outside, a group of bikers pulled up, their motorcycles rumbling like thunder. The Reapers, they were called, an infamous local motorcycle club known for causing trouble wherever they went. Their leader, a man known as Red, had a reputation that stretched far beyond Kansas City. He was tough, had connections in places most people wouldn't dare enter, and ran his club with an iron fist. Red's men, including the massive Tank and the sneaky Scorpion, followed him into the Public Safety Center with the kind of swagger that only comes from decades of operating outside the law. Inside, Officer Daniels, a seasoned cop in her late 40s, eyed the bikers warily as they entered. She'd dealt with them before, sometimes just passing through, other times getting into serious trouble. She wasn't afraid, but she was cautious. Her job was to keep the peace, not escalate situations, and she knew how quickly the Reapers could go from a harmless nuisance to a dangerous threat. "Got business here?" Officer Daniels asked, eyeing Red, who stepped forward with his chest puffed out, as if daring her to challenge him. "Just here to talk," Red said, his voice smooth but carrying a hint of menace. "Nothing illegal yet." Officer Daniels gave him a sharp look, but said nothing. Red and his crew had been known to hang out in places like this when they needed to lay low or handle something off the books. But she wasn't about to give them free rein. "You've got a problem, talk to the front desk, otherwise no loitering." Red's grin widened. "No need to be so uptight, sweetheart. We're just passing through." It was clear they weren't planning on leaving anytime soon, but Officer Daniels wasn't going to let them disrupt the center. She kept her distance, maintaining a watchful eye as Red and his men made their way deeper into the room. The atmosphere in the room shifted, the tension was palpable. People didn't feel comfortable with the bikers' presence, but no one said anything. Everyone knew that confronting Red and his crew could lead to more trouble than they wanted. Just then the door opened, and a new figure stepped into the room, Sergeant Jake Mitchell. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and walked with the confidence of someone who had seen and survived things most people couldn't imagine. His military camouflage was crisp and new, a stark contrast to the worn-out leather and denim the bikers wore. Jake had recently returned from his last tour, and while adjusting to civilian life had been difficult, today he wasn't here for the usual debriefing or paperwork. He was there to help organize a community safety event. As he walked to the front desk, the bikers took notice. Red's eyes flicked to Jake, and something about the soldier's calm demeanor seemed to irk him. The room fell silent for a moment as the two men locked eyes, Jake's expression stoic, Red's filled with a predatory curiosity. Red didn't like being upstaged by anyone, especially not someone who looked as composed as Jake did. Jake, who had faced insurgents, hostile environments, and close-quarters combat, didn't acknowledge the challenge in Red's gaze. He walked straight to the front desk, intent on his task, but Red wasn't about to let him ignore him. Red's voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're not from around here, are you?" Red said, his tone not as friendly as it might have seemed. "That uniform? You one of those tough guys?" Jake didn't flinch. He simply turned around slowly, his hands resting by his sides, his eyes unwavering. "I've seen enough trouble to know when to keep my head down," Jake said, his voice calm, but there was an underlying steel in it. "I'm not interested in drama. I'm here to help out. You got a problem with that?" The tension in the room escalated immediately. The bikers, sensing a chance for confrontation, began inching closer. Tank, the largest of the crew, cracked his knuckles loudly, while Scorpion smirked from the corner. Red grinned. "I think you need to show a little respect, soldier. I'm not sure who you think you're talking to, but around here, we do things our way. Jake's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted ever so slightly, alert but controlled. I don't care who you are or what you think you run. If you want to cause trouble, I'm not the one you want to do it with. The words hung in the air, the challenge clearly set, but Red wasn't the type to back. In a small, remote village nestled in the mountains of Nepal, there lived two inseparable friends, Ravi and Kiran. Their bond was forged during childhood, solidified by shared hardships and dreams of a brighter future. One evening, as they sat atop the hill overlooking their village, they made a solemn promise to each other. No matter where life takes us, we'll always meet back here every year on this very date to share our stories and keep our friendship alive. Time passed, and life took its unpredictable course. Ravi, ambitious and resourceful, moved to the bustling city of Kathmandu, chasing dreams of prosperity. Kiran, content with a simpler life, stayed in the village, helping his family and embracing the tranquility of their home. In their first few years apart, Ravi made it a point to return to the hill. Each visit was a joyous occasion filled with laughter, stories of the city, and reflections on their roots. But as Ravi's career flourished, his visits became infrequent. Calls and letters turned into occasional texts, and soon the promise they once made began to fade into memory. One year, Kiran climbed the hill alone. He waited from sunrise to sunset, scanning the path Ravi used to take, but no one came. Hurt but hopeful, he returned the next year and the next. Still, Ravi never appeared. Years passed and the village grew quieter. One day, Kiran received an unexpected call. It was Ravi. His voice, once full of energy, now sounded subdued. He confessed his regret over breaking their promise, explaining how the pressures of life had consumed him. He promised this time, truly promised that he would return. Kiran, now older and wiser, climbed the hill once more, his heart filled with cautious anticipation. But as the day stretched into evening, Ravi never came. Days later, Kiran learned that Ravi had passed away in a sudden accident while on his way to the village. He had been carrying a small notebook with him, filled with letters he'd written to Kiran over the years but never sent. Kiran found solace in those unsent letters, realizing that while Ravi hadn't kept their promise physically, he had held on to their friendship in his heart. Standing on the hilltop, Kiran made a silent vow to continue their tradition. Knowing Ravi's spirit would always be there with him, the promise may have been left unkept, but their bond endured unbroken by time, distance, or even death.